You know, it never really hit me until today, but 2022 really was the year of the refresh, everyone. Seriously, with but 3, arguably only 2, content updates released throughout it, we have spent this entire year talking nothing but character reworks and quality of life tweaks to said characters. So then, with 2023 and its roadmap on the horizon, I feel it's time for a trip down memory lane, yes. Let us recap and review every Survivor's refresh and see who came away from these 365 days stronger than ever. Starting with the not-so-strong man himself, Wolfgang. But hold the flip up, beard. Didn't this friend of ours receive his update at the end of last year? If so, why are we revisiting this circus all over again? Well, because his entire refresh cycle was a circus in and of itself. That's why. The guy had roughly 3 reworks to his rework over the course of 3 months, and it wasn't until February of this very year that Clay officially put down the training weight, so to speak. Now, I myself had completely forgotten about this, and I am sure I am not alone there. So how about we do get a quick information set in, yes? Wolfgang's mightiness was no longer tied to his stomach beyond the drain rate of his new mightiness meter in relation to his hunger overall, and was now a factor of work, combat, and pumping iron. Literally in some cases. The gym nut can now craft actual gyms that have gotten more efficient over time. Multiple dumbbells were added that could be used for gaining mightiness on the go, all the while being both melee and ranged weapon types. And the would-be wimp even toned up by swinging his tools every which way to Sunday. But that reminds me, Wolfgang also saw tweaks to his mightiness forms that saw Wimpy Wolf being less efficient at the latter, struggling with the cold, and plenty more, all the while Mighty Wolf would see the exact opposite and then some in pretty much every single case. It was good stuff, after of course we actually reached that good spot. Wolfgang is still Wolfgang, he just needs to do a lot more to reach Wolfgang levels. Add in the critical hit work mechanic, meaning he might fell a tree or bust open a boulder in one hit now and then. He has that sanity thing that I'm sure people don't even remember, where he loses more sanity from monsters in darkness, sure, but when he's by other players and other survivors, that's actually negated a little bit. There's a couple of other tweaks here and there, like how fast he runs with heavy things, which I thought was a mod when I first saw it, and he's just become a bit more of a nuanced character, even if he still is the survivor that anyone should pick if they want relative ease with any fight in the game. He's still not anywhere near my favorites, but I have to say, I do appreciate him more now in this year than ever before. And you know, as much as it pains my empathy module to say it, I think the very same can be said about our next automaton friend here, WX-78. Having officially recalibrated the constant on April 28th, 2022, WX's was the true start of the planned reworks for this year, and I think it's safe to say that Clay went a bit haywire with it, in a good way mind. Alongside their new pal Jimmy, WX-78 was now capable of scanning well over a dozen mobs, bosses, and more in search of the biodata they needed to help upgrade nearly every facet of themselves in hopes of further rejecting humanity as they knew it was before. Now these tweaks took the form of circuits that would now plug into their freshly introduced charge meter, and said improvements range from varying stat boosts, temperature control, damage reflection, and even infinite light to name a few. Thing is, however, such amazing additions came at the cost of not only their overcharged mechanics, but also their previous gear upgrades, as both were and are still removed from the game entirely, having been replaced by one or more of them 15 plus circuits we mentioned. Not only that though, wetness had become even more dangerous, and managing the previously mentioned charge meter wasn't actually the easiest thing in the world. If you wanted to mix and match anything, that is. And that's the kicker, everybody, because if you didn't and you don't, having learned the best combinations in the game rendered all of that practically meaningless. But why, you ask? Oh, I don't know, perhaps it's the fact that WX-78 can now have infinite light, insane speed, and complete control over their temperature within days, and that's all you will ever need. That's why. So remember how I started by reluctantly saying that I appreciate WX and this rework? Yeah, that's because I do. It's awesome, and it plays great, and that is what matters, but it is also one of the most broken OP thing Clay has ever released ever, and this is pretty much the start of that throughout this entire year. A great rework, fun gameplay overall, an awesome short. However, it's just somewhat discouraging how little you have to care about over half of it, and we didn't even mention the hidden ice farm potential within it, or even the fact that clockworks are going to be somewhat, essentially, neutral to WX, unless we get really close to them for Pete's sake. But before we get too far into that, and before we move on to the next biggest and best refresh of the year, we must take a quick detour to discuss the mini reworks within these reworks that Clay was so fond of throughout 2022. For you see, WX-78 update was more so a WX-78, Wurt and Wormwood release all in one. Wurt became the only character in the entire game to benefit from never being able to be disarmed ever again, even by Berger and or Muskus. Frogs became neutral to all merms, which is one of the biggest changes ever made in this game, if you think about it. The king of the merms received major buffs to his hunger and loot tables, having added more to both overall, plus gold to the latter. Merms themselves were now able to be recruited without having to feed them directly, making for easier and more efficient merm army gatherings, and oh so much more. Seriously, even given how it was pitted against the official WX-78 refresh, this mini Wurt rework was and is still incredible. But yes, do not forget about the significant increases to both the durability and damage absorption rates of Wormwood's Bramble Husk armor at the end of the day, as that too can go down as a mini rework of sorts. It's fantastic stuff, and believe it or not, it's not the only detour that we're going to be taking today along these lines. So again, allow me to drive home this point. Wurt also got refreshed this year among the WX-78 rework, and it might, just might, be the best of the bunch, considering how forgetful Wurt was getting prior to this year. Because while many in the community were also starting to feel the same about our local librarian Wickerbottom here, at least this know-it-all granny continued to hold on to some of her goddess-like powers over the years. That said, a refresh for her was still on the page, and let me tell ya, it would become one for the history books once it did indeed land. And that's saying something, as it was and is easily still the simplest rework we have ever seen. 11 novelty novels were added to the shelves, alongside a literal shelf that can now recharge not only these 11 new tomes, but all of her older ones too. And believe it or not, everyone, that's it essentially. That's the Wickerbottom refresh in a nutshell. Well, minus her absolutely glorious and thought-provoking animation, that is. Something that you should probably go watch again, right flipping now. Seriously, people, what more is there to say about this goddess? She has a book that controls the moon cycle, for Pete's sake. That alone makes her incredible. She can stop the rain, she can start the rain, she can adjust temperatures, she can spawn grumble bees for whatever reason, she can circumvent ocean fishing entirely, while still somehow ocean fishing, and so much more. And yeah, sure, Clay went a little further by adding that really odd fiery pen thing that I'm still not even sure why it's in the game, and then the whole sleep resistance thing that makes it to where nothing compared to the sleep anymore. Now the latter is probably noteworthy, but to be honest, both of those things are pretty darn ignorable when compared to her books. She is bonkers insane, everybody, and even if her rework is so bare bones, what they did add is literally game-changing, and not a soul can argue against that. And heck, she might have returned to being my main after fading away after all these years. That is, if we don't count this triple play of mini slays by Wortox, Walter, and Winona at the end of the day. Also dropped with the Wickerbottom updates, the latter two weren't anything too crazy mind, although I would note how wearing armor on Wabi is now ideal for any scouts out there who don't want to get bucked off of her every 2 seconds from even the tiniest of hits. But the Wortox tweaks are not something to simply glance over. His souls now not only grant him more hunger when eaten, but will also heal his sanity when dropped to heal himself and others. Soul hopping with said souls comes with added potential of being able to do so for free if done in quick succession. The imp can teleport via the map without ever leaving it, and can even leave to any Ocuvigil available, even if they're on a moving boat. Oh yes, it's crazy powerful, even if bigger hops do cost more of your souls. And there you have it, everyone. Detour number 2. pretty darn good, right? Even the smallest of character tweaks from this year are going to be playing a massive role in what's to come, and it's getting harder and harder to pick between who I want to play more and more because the playing fields are getting pretty even pretty quick. And heck, perhaps even in the case of the deposed king of the constant himself, Maxwell. Now, having just spent all of November covering his update and his update alone, and I do mean all of November, mind, I really don't think we need to be tricky here. He underwent many changes, and now he's just a lazy magician with a lot of shadowy spells up his sleeve and a cool new hat. Oh, and a pretty important animation that probably spells out doom for the rest of us and the future of the constant, but you know, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Shadow Sneak panics and slows mobs and might just transform 3 select mobs into their nightmare form counterparts that guarantees nightmare fuel drops from them. Shadow Prison isn't really spammable anymore. It kind of loses effectiveness in combat, but is somehow still effective in combat and can still be spammed if you have the nightmare fuel to use it, so it's both good and bad at the same time. Shadow Servants last way longer, can literally become Jesus and do way more for us, including gathering loot that's on the ground. Shadow Duelist gets stronger as we do and can potentially deal 90 damage a hit, which is ridiculous. The Magician's Hat is a crazy good portable storage that we can now just wear atop our noggins anywhere we please, and the linked Magician's Chest is not only a better storage, accessible by anybody in the game, it also gives us access to the Shadow Dimensional Storage place that is also linked to the hat and Shadow Chester. It's pretty freaking good. Listen, I, too, still don't really feel like a puppet master, even after they reworked the initial rework 15 times, and that is not an exaggeration, but I still think we have Maxi in a fine place. Now, perhaps I'm only saying that because I don't really want to talk about him anymore, but hey, I guess we'll see what happens next year, right? And folks, there you have it. That was part 1 of our year in review of Don't Starve Together for 2022. And bloody heck, that's a mouthful. That was and is every character rework and mini tweak from this year. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And hopefully putting it all in one place, compiling all the information I could find and remember into one place, helps those appreciate just how much work goes into this game. WX became the best transhumanist a transhumanist could ever be. Wickerbottom is now a goddess among goddess, and Maxwell is just, well, let's just call him Maxwell, right? You sprinkle in the extra things, you put the cherry on top that was the Wolfgang rework that bled from last year into this year, and bloody heck, it's kind of crazy to think about that all of this, was only half of the content we received this year. It's also bittersweet though, everyone, as while I do agree we're probably going to have some other mini character tweaks in the coming years, there's only one officially big one left. Wilson. But just like the upcoming Wilson rework, we're not going to be talking any more updates until 2023. This will do it. This video here wraps all of our YouTube content of the year, which is also very bittersweet. Thank you so much for everything across the board, everyone. Thank you for watching all the videos. Thanks for helping me compile all this information throughout all of 2022. And I will be seeing you next year for all the content updates and then some. Bye-bye.